some of the criticism was deserved, and and as you say, the market is doing its best to try and address the criticisms that were made that were legitimate. The one thing though that was shocking to me actually, and not many things shocked me, but was the virility of the attacks by the sort of anti-market crowd that
Hmm.
were essentially ideological. That it wasn't really about the quality of a project. It wasn't really about the overcrediting of a standard or a methodology. It was really about we don't want to see you exist. We have a problem with your category of thing existing on Earth. So and they were the most virulent attacks and the most persistent attacks, and they won't go away to a degree because they have this ideological view, which, putting a different hat on, you can say, okay, the market has been responsible for terrible things on Earth, and should we really be putting our trust in the market to fix things? And so I get the
But,
point.
but can we address that, Mike? Because like
Yeah,
you just talked about and gave a business case for it, right? Like essentially you said
yeah, no,
that
because I'm a pragmatist,
markets
Renee.
scale. Yeah.
I'm a pragmatist. I don't I'm not an ideologist. I'm not an
Hmm.
ideologue. I'm a pragmatist. So while I might sympathize with the point of view academically, intellectually, I can sympathize with that point of view. It's not a practical point of view, in my opinion. It's not and
Hmm.
I'm about solutions for wildlife and forests and communities. So it's not a very productive space for me to spend much time. Right. My productive space is what's a practical solution for driving money, and that answer is the market. And there is no other answer, in my opinion. It's not government. It's not philanthropy. They have a role to play. Don't get me wrong. They have we need everything everywhere all at once to quote the title of that movie, because we're so far behind on so many things but that's part of why I was so shocked is that surely you have something better to do to further your own approach to improving the world and addressing things that are at issue than attacking people who are making a genuine effort to do it in a different way that you don't agree with. I mean, I don't agree with lots of things, but I don't go out of my way to attack them if I who died and made me queen, as we used to say in England. So I had those thoughts a lot. These days you have to say who died and made me king. I guess there's a king in the
Yeah.
UK now.
There's a change.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I was quite surprised by how virulent they are. The genuine criticisms are about are if you're talking about the science behind it, as I mentioned, there's a lot of science behind the work that went into these projects, always. We've always looked at satellite images. We've always spent lots of time and money interpreting them as accurately as we possibly can. Those of us that are attempting to do responsible projects have always done that. We did the science to know how much carbon is in a forest. We did the science to figure out how fast it was disappearing. A project like Kasagawa passes the eye test because when you go there, you see this wall of deforestation that's right up to the edge of the project and starts at the other side of the project and goes the other way. And so it's very obviously a corridor that's left. But so we, yeah, the criticisms were harmful for sure. I don't think it's the only thing, and I don't think it's necessarily the most significant thing that damaged the market. If I'm honest, I think there are other things
Yeah.
that were
Can you
equally
unpack it? What do you think?
well. I think the market self-inflicted a significant amount of wounds in response to that criticism. So from an investor perspective, for people that market dried up because not because of the criticism. Investors invest in all kinds of things that have reputational risk. It wasn't that. It was the inability, the standard body that was at that time, the one that everybody used, stopped the ability for any project to calculate a baseline for a number of years because they announced the new methodology that was going to be the basis for all methodologies, but they didn't issue it. To this day, you still can't create a baseline under that standard. And so the baseline is the fundamental building block of the economics of any project. And so in our category, in the reduction category, it is the what is the highest likelihood of emissions that would come from this area in the absence of the project. Without that, you can't do anything. You can't figure out how much money you're going to have to invest, how much possibility of reducing emissions you might have. So, that is what stalled the investors in the market was there that, and I can tell you, for me, at least, this is my personal experience, that we had loads of conversations in 21 and 22 with investors that were super excited about the market because everybody saw the frothiness of the sales in 2021 and 2022. But the minute that they wouldn't invest until you could tell them what the potential of a new project is. And the potential of a new project was based on the baseline, always. And so without that, there was no way that they can invest. To this day, I'm having conversations that I started 3 years ago with the same investors, still waiting for me to be able to give them a baseline. They're still waiting to invest. Some of them have been patient about it. Some of them have obviously invested in, pork futures or something. I don't know. But some of them have been waiting. And we're getting closer, in all fairness, we're getting closer on a number of fronts to being able to answer that question. But as of today, I can't answer that question for any of my projects anywhere in the world. Since 2022, I haven't been able to answer that question. And that's what stalled the investment in the market, in my opinion, because everybody's in the same camp that I am in our category. So in our category, you need a baseline before you can determine the economics of your project. It's a fundamental. And so that was one. I would say it was the one of the significant things. The other thing is that the market that existed running up to 2022 was a speculative market dominated by traders and investors. It never built the primary market capacity to absorb credits and retire them for environmental benefit. And part of that has to do with the fact that under the Paris Agreement and all the trickle down effect of that into the corporate world, targets don't really start until 2030. So, companies that they don't really have to make a retirement claim, even if they're in a compliance regime until 2030, many of them. So a lot of this action that was going on for 20 years was just companies trying to figure out how they were going to be able to access credits and which project types and which projects they wanted to work with when they really needed them, and how they were going to stockpile those credits towards their commitments so they didn't have to buy them all in 1 year in 2030. And so that's become increasingly clear. And there was a lot of speculation about that happened that ran the market up in 19, 20, 21, thinking that now the market is coming, we'll hold on to them for a while and benefit when the real commitments come in later in the 20s. And obviously, like, we're getting there now, it's 2025. So that lack of the market finding enough reasons to have people engage and retire early was also a challenge. Because if you're me, you have a primary cost of producing a credit. And it's very hard. People ask me all the time, well, surely by now you must know what that number is. And the answer is no, because it's largely about the opportunity cost for the communities. That's ultimately where it starts, right? The technical costs are not significant relative to the opportunity cost for the community for whatever else they were planning on doing with that land. And so that makes it a little bit difficult and different every place. But there's always an answer that is acceptable to the community from their own perspective. And so that means that I have sort of a minimum threshold for price that below which these projects don't work. You can't get the community incentivized to do this transfer of their livelihoods, essentially, without adequate incentive. So I have a price. The other people that have a price are those companies that do plan to make environmental commitments and mitigate their footprint by retiring credits and making an environmental claim. They have a budget for how much they're willing to spend on doing that. And in the middle, you have a whole bunch of buyers who are hoping that they can get it from me for a price that's less than the corporate ones, and then on-sell it to the corporate. And when that didn't happen, when all the volume was stuck with intermediaries in 2022, and they could realize they couldn't just keep trading with each other. That happened a lot in 21 and 22, but it stopped when everybody realized that there's no end game here. And so a lot of the big traders jumped out of the market and dumped lots of volume into the market, which is really what tanked the prices, is them dumping their volume into the market because they were getting out of it for a period of time. Now, they'll be back when the market is more mature, and they have a very important role to play in the market. So this is not about bashing intermediaries. It was just a timing issue that that this market has been overhyped for 20 years. So it's a bad idea to start by showing people an up and to the right graph that ends at $4 trillion, right? Or something. So you do that, and then you get everyone interested from the get-go, instead of saying, actually, we have no idea how valuable this market is. We're just going to figure it out as we go along. We know it needs to be really big to be effective and to have the impact that we think it could have in globally mitigating climate. But we shouldn't start out by saying it's going to be a $4 trillion market, and then everybody jumps in at the beginning. So I think that was a bit of a disservice. I don't know, my opinion.